Today, in the next few minutes, you will have an awesome project ready to add to your resume. I will teach you how to develop a music application. Alongside developing the project, you will have an better understanding of how to use API in your application, how to pass queries, parameters and much more. These are very important concepts of application development. Hello everyone and welcome to Scalers YouTube channel. I am Soumya, a software engineer and an educator. In the part 1, that is this lecture, I will try to find some good free music API and then I will teach you how we can fetch data like music, album, artist information, etc. from that free API into our application. But before we deep dive into the lecture, make sure you check out our free master classes by industry leading expert on Scalers event page. Link is in the description. So yes, let's get into the system and start working on our project. Perfect. So first of all, let's understand what an API is. So for example, we all use so many applications in our day-to-day life, like Amazon app is there, Spotify, everywhere, whatever application you are using, the use of API is indeed there. For example, let's say if you use Amazon app, right? So if I search for maybe shoes and then I press on enter, so I get a list of shoes right out there, like from different brands like Adidas, Nike, etc. I get a big list, right? So you would have thought someday, from where that list is coming. So that is where API comes into picture. So as end user, you will get all the required information on your app screen. That is what you want. But all these things are done by us, that is developers. What we do, we write code in a way that we bring APIs and the end screen both into action. Like developers, we design the app in a way that it could access the data stored in the databases via APIs. And for this purpose, we have multiple third-party libraries like Retrofit is there, right? Volley is there, OKHTTP. These are some of the third-party dependencies using which we work with APIs in our applications. So if these concepts are a bit, tough for you, on this page only, on this Scalers YouTube channel only, I have created some basic tutorials as well for app development. You can first check out that and then start with this one. Perfect. So talking about APIs, so what APIs are? API will connect the database to access the required information and send it to our application. Like right now it's all theory, but when I will implement it, when I will write the code in the application, then it will become quite easy for you to understand. And assets or databases, it's self-explanatory. Like databases, that's a place where all the data is stored, right? Awesome. And this is a pictorial representation of what an API is. So API, which stands for Application Programming Interface, it allows two programs to communicate on the web API between like an application and a server. It basically facilitates the transfer of data. These are the steps. 3 steps are most important when we talk about API. The number 1, request. API call is initiated by the client. Like let's say if I ask for some clothes, right? So API will be triggered. A call will be made to the API via me, via the end user. And then the worker, that is like here they have given the example of B, that act as an API. It goes to the server and then collect the data. The API goes to the server that collect the data and then we get the response in our end screen in our phone. The API transfer the requested data back to the like requesting application. Let's say I'm using application Spotify. I requested for some bhakti music. So what the API will do, it will go to the server, it will fetch the data and show on the end screen. That is my Spotify application, right? It all is done in few seconds. You don't even realize what's going on in the background. But we developers, we know that we write code in a way that everything is done fastly. We don't do these things on the same thread, on the main thread. You won't even realize that an API call is being made, but in the background it is being made, right? So you can take a screenshot of this picture and try to understand yourself as well how everything is done. It all starts from here. Once you make the HTTP request, like here it is get nectar. We can do get music, get clothes, anything, right? And then from the server API collect the data, and finally it is shown to us the client. Awesome. This is JSON format. So what happens is, like, I'm talking so much about API, and now you have a basic idea as well what an API is. Like, if I'm requesting some data, so API will fetch that data for me from the database and show it in my application, right? So, and the full form is application programming interface. So the data that we are talking about, that comes in JSON format, okay? And this is an example of JSON format that you see here. So let me explain you right now. I know that it might be a bit difficult to understand, but I will make it all super simple for you, don't worry. So this curly braces, these are called as objects, okay? And inside this we have a bands array. You can see the starting point of bands array is this, and it is closing here, right? It is closing here. And inside the bands array we have two objects, object 1 from here to here and object 2, this one. Then in object 1, that is object 1 and object 2. So in object 1 we have few parameters like name, description, image. In the same way in object 2 as well, we have name, description, image, year, albums, and so on, right? So this is a basic structure of a JSON data. In JSON data, we have arrays, right? Arrays which are represented by square brackets, and we have objects as well. We have objects as well which are represented using curly braces. This is a basic overview of how JSON data looks like. Moving ahead, this is again the same explanation that I just did, that curly braces means objects and square bracket means we have arrays. Perfect. And like if we have square brackets like this, that means that is array of data. Objects means we have information inside object. Perfect. Moving ahead, now you have a basic idea of what an API is, right? You know the full form, you know what the role of API is, and you also know what JSON is, like the basic structure of JSON data. I will use a free music API, and then I will fetch all the information in that application, okay? Once we'll do the practical, then you will get a better understanding of everything. Now that you have a basic understanding of what an API is and what is JSON format, you got a basic structure like in what format JSON data is designed. So now what I will do is, I will quickly get into the system. I will tell you the steps, what we will do, what we will follow to create our application. Perfect. Alright. So let me write the steps here. Steps to create the application. The very first thing is, we have to add the dependencies. We have to add the dependencies in our application, right? In our application, we will add the useful dependencies like retrofit and JSON converter, which will convert the data for us into JSON format. We will use Picasso, etc., some other third-party libraries as well. And second step is, we will convert the data class. We will basically create the data class by converting the JSON data, okay? We will exactly create the data class here. Create data class by converting the JSON data. Like we have some extension, I will teach you, then you will understand it all very well. And after that, we will create an API interface. API interface, right? And the fourth step will be, we will fetch all the data in our main activity. Fetch data in main activity. And then we'll work on the UI UX part as well. Perfect. So these are kind of summarized steps for you. These are the same, like add dependencies, create data class, API interface, get data in main, and then populating the data, that is UI UX. Perfect. So now let's try to search for some free good music API that we will use in our application. Free music API, and this is the first top blog which I'm getting. top free music data APIs. And if we scroll down, so this is a good list of APIs. The first one is Deezer API, so I'm going with that only. So let me tell you, like Spotify, as it's very popular in India, so Deezer is a similar kind of music application that's heavily popular outside India. People use it a lot to listen to music, etc. So do one thing, as you click on this link, make sure you are signed up to this portal, Rapid API. So Rapid API, basically this is a portal where they have huge collection of APIs, right? Awesome. So Deezer API, Deezer is, you can assume that it's very much like a Spotify only. They have these endpoints, as you can see, infos, radio, search, etc. And depending upon in which language you are writing the code, you can choose the language here. So we will be writing the code heavily in Kotlin for our application. So they have given the option here, Kotlin, okay, HTTP. So this is the code base example also that they have given. If you want to just copy paste their code, you can do that as well. But I will teach everything from scratch. We will create the application from zero, from scratch, so that you understand everything very properly, right? And if I test endpoint here, so we will get the result in this result tab. Okay, so here you can see we will get 3 keys in our API. Okay, that is object, one object which is having 3 keys. If I open it up, data is the first array, then total, which is of type int, and then we have next variable, which is of type string, right? If I open up the data array, then there I have 25 more objects, right? And inside each and every we have multiple data, like what is the ID of the music, the title of the music, then the artist information is here. A lot many, data is available here. So this is, I think, a good API for us. I mean, I will fetch it in my application, and then we will show some basic information like music title, artist information, etc. So first step is done. I mean, not exactly first step. I mean, I'll add the dependencies. That was the first step that I told you. But before that, we have to find a free music API, right? So I have got a good music API. And yes, I mean, these are some header parameters, etc. that we will need to add in our application. I'll teach you, don't worry. And then these are some required parameters as well. Perfect. So let's do one thing. Let's open up Android Studio and start the work. So Android Studio, and if you don't know exactly how to create basic project in Android Studio, I would highly recommend again that you go and check out the basic tutorials on this channel only, which I have created. So go ahead and choose an empty activity. Let's name it music app, and click on finish. You can leave all other stuff as they are. Language, choose Kotlin, minimum SDK 24, and let's click on finish. Once you click on finish, because it's a bit heavy software, I mean, it is a software using which we create applications, right? So it will take few seconds, minute, depending upon your internet, depending upon the storage of your system. And for me, it's almost done. You can see here at the bottom, Gradle build is happening. They are importing some of the Gradle projects, etc. Right? So I won't explain all the features in the application. I'm assuming you have a bit of idea of what an Android Studio is, how it works. So let's go and work on the step number 1, that is adding dependencies, relevant dependencies for our music application. So I'm opening up Gradle scripts. I'll go in build.gradle. And here in the dependencies section, I have to add the relevant dependencies, right? So the very first one is retrofit dependency. So let's go and search for the retrofit dependency. So let me write retrofit dependency Android. So this is their well explained blog that they have created. So if you want to use retrofit in your application, so they have given all these steps, like you have to create the API interface. This is the kind of code that you will be writing. They have written it in Java, and today we will be writing in the official language of Android, that is Kotlin, right? So if we scroll down, so here we have the dependency. So let's copy this, and here we will put the retrofit dependency. So they haven't given the latest version. Let me check from their GitHub repository. If we go here and if we click on the tags, so we will get the latest, that is 2.9.0, right? 2.9.0. And after that I want JSON converter, right? JSON converter. So that is exactly the same, that exactly has the same group ID as retrofit, right? The only difference will be here in the JSON converter, in the JSON converter. Perfect. And after that, let's just click on sync now, and you can confirm this. I mean, if let's say you are not sure of if the JSON converter dependency is correct or not, so you can just write here something like this and you might get some good results from here. So you can see, I mean, this is kind of existing dependency, that is the converter JSON that actually exists. Perfect. And the group ID is also exactly same as we have written, and the version is also 2.9.0. And after that we just have to click on sync now. So what sync now will do, it will download all the relevant data classes, dependencies for the given dependencies that we added, like retrofit and JSON converter. So we have done this step number 1. Let me show you by sharing this iPad screen as well. So this is the step number 1 that we just completed. We added the relevant dependencies in our application, and after that we will focus on the step number 2, that is creating the data class. Perfect. So I have the JSON data ready here. You can see, I mean, if I go here, this is the exact JSON data, JSON information that I want, right? So I'll just copy it, and to explain it in a better way to you, I will open up JSON formatter, okay? JSON formatter, and let's click on this one. And if I paste the JSON data that I copied from the website Deezer API, and if I click on process here, so you can see, I mean, this is the processed JSON data that we have got. This is one object, right? This is one object. If I expand it, so I have 3 things here. Number 1, array of data. Number 2, total, the variable of type integer. And then I have next variable, which is of type string, right? So inside data array, I have these many objects. If I you can go on, minimizing it if you see here. So we have 3 keys, and then inside data we have 25 items, we have 25 objects, right? In a single object, if you want to see what data that contains, so that contains ID, title of the music, title short, then duration of the music, rank of the music, like music also has some rank, right? What is the rank of the music, popular music, etc. And we have the preview of the music as well, like they will play the music for a short time, kind of trailer or something you can say. And then we have image. Then here is the artist information, the artist who has created that particular music, like Eminem is the name of the artist for this music, picture of the artist, etc. All this is inside artist object, and then album object is there, which contain the information about the album. So inside the single data object also we have 2 more objects, you can say, album and artist. Apart from that, these string or integer variables are there. Perfect. So let me do one thing. I already have the copied JSON data, right? So what I will do, I will right click here, I will go on new, just notice the cursor of my mouse, okay? And here if you see at number 3, Kotlin data class file from JSON. So if you want to convert JSON data into data class, so that we can do using this extension, right? If you don't have this extension, so listen to me very carefully, you just have to go in the files option. Here you can go in the Android Studio, then preferences. Basically you have to go in the settings, and after that just go in the plugins and search here for JSON converter or something like that. So the JSON to Kotlin class, basically this is what I have to do. I have the JSON data, I have to convert it into Kotlin class. So I have installed this. You have to install it and press OK. Perfect. And after that, once you will come here in the Java folder and in the package name, right click here and new. After that, Kotlin data class file from JSON, I will just paste it and then click on format and give name to the data class. So I'm giving it the name my data. Okay, my data will be the class name, the main class name, and I will click on generate here. So you can see, I mean, it has created 4 files for me, right? The very first is my data, in which we have 3 main data, because we know that in our teaser API we had 3 main data, right? What were they? Data, total, next. So here as well we have data, total and next, right? After that, in data, that is an array of objects, right? So it has created a list of data. If I go on data class now, so you can see inside data we have plenty of information, and as I told you earlier as well, inside data class as well we have 2 more classes, that is album and artist class, right? Apart from that, some string, integer, etc. variables are there. Perfect. So my data is the main class, and then I have data class, inside which I have again album, and then I have artist class as well. Let me close all these data classes. Now if I show you, if I again do the screencast, so we have done this step number 2 as well, that is creating the data class. So this step is done, adding dependencies. Let me mark it with yellow. So add dependencies, this is done. This was very easy, right? Just adding the dependencies in the build.gradle, and after that we are also done with creating the data class, right? And after that, step number 3 is something we are going to do right now, that is creating the API interface. And if you want to get an overview of the data, the JSON data that we are using, so this is the overview. We have 3 keys in that data, and after that we have 2 more objects like next, as well as the other was, I guess, total, the total music that the data is having. Perfect. I mean, you can use any API for that matter, and I explained you the format as well very clearly, how the JSON data is. Most importantly, you should know the difference between this and this. This is object and this is your array. Perfect. All right. So now is the time that we should create the API interface, that is step number 3. All right. So for that, what you have to do, just go here and create a new class, go on new, and then Kotlin class. I will name it API interface, and instead of class file, just click on interface. So API interface is created here for you. Here you just have to create a simple function. So I will create function get data, okay, and the return type of it. So I'm not doing anything special. I mean, every information is explained here in the retrofit blog itself. I mean, if you read here, so they have told you that, okay, you have to create a kind of interface, and that should be of type call, and that should return the list of the Pojo class, basically the my data class that we created. No, that is called Pojo class as well. All right, so here I will use call of retrofit, and then I will pass here list of my data. Awesome. And inside this, if you notice in our Deezer API, so we have to pass some query as well. This is required parameter. So what I will do is, I have to give a query parameter. That's very simple. You just have to write @query, right? @query, and the name of that query. Like in our API, we have queue here. You can see the required parameter is queue, right? So you just have to write queue, and after that, you just have to write queue and name for the query, and just the type of the query. So here we have to give the name of the artist, right? We are searching music by the name of the artist. So Eminem is the artist name, right? So this is of type string. So I will just write a string here. Perfect. That's all what you have to do. This is the way you pass queries. Like this, let me show you. This is the code snippet, right? This much part is the base URL. This is the base URL that we will pass in our main activity. And after that, we have search, okay, the endpoint. And after that, we have query, in which we are passing the name of the artist. So for that we have to pass here query as well, and after that you just have to write here @get, because we are getting some data from the API, right? And just write the endpoint. So you can see multiple endpoints are given here in the API, like infos, radio, search, playlist, artist. So we are using right now search endpoint. So I will write here search. That's it. That, I mean, you have to write inside obviously double quotes. All right. And if you notice here, we have one more extra thing in this API, that is they have given us some header parameters, right? They have given us some header parameters. For that, what you have to do, I mean, you can just copy from here as well the header parameters. So you just have to write @headers, @headers, and just give all the information of the headers here. Okay, let me put the double quote here, and after that you can just take the information from here directly. So this is the header 1. Basically this is Rapid API key and Rapid API host. To access the API we have to add these headers. Okay, whoops, command V. Okay, I didn't copy, I guess, so let's copy it and then we will put in our application. Okay, copy, and here we go. So let me put it in a better way. All right, and after this, because we have two headers, right, not a single header, right? So for that I will add the other one as well, which is the Rapid API host, right? Rapid API host. Here we copied it and we just have to put it here. Just remove these extra stuff and you will be good to go. Perfect. All right, I just want to remove this part. All right, make sure that when you copy these keys, they should be correct. Let's say if I miss 5 from here, or if I put something else, then the API will not work and we will not be able to fetch the data from the API, right? Awesome. So instead of plus, let me put a comma here, and yes, we are good to go. Perfect. So we are done with step number 3 as well, that is creating API interface. For that you just have to create a function get data, and that should return call and whatever your Pojo class is, so list of my data, and inside this we have to pass some query, because in this API we are searching for music on the basis of name of the artist. That's why I have passed some query here, and you have to write @get and name of the endpoint. Which endpoint we are using? Search. So I have written here search, and after that you have to write the headers as well. Awesome. And now you are almost kind of done with the basic stuff. Now our main step is we have to get all this information in our main activity, right? So let's go and write the retrofit builder, which is most important, right? So val retrofit builder, it's pretty simple and easy. Retrofit dot builder. I mean, obviously as a beginner, no one expects that you know everything, I mean, how to write the code, because I have been writing many softwares, many applications, so kind of these code bases are on tips, but obviously as a beginner no one expects you to know or rote learn all the code. I mean, you can just follow these blogs. I mean, retrofit, all the information is provided here that you have to create the retrofit builder. So I just created the retrofit builder. After that you have to pass the base URL, right? So the base URL for the API is here. I will just take this base URL from here. Don't take search the endpoint, because endpoint we are passing here, right? Endpoint we are passing here. So just take the base URL, and after that you have to add converter here, add converter factory, and inside this you have to pass JSON converter factory. So it should auto complete. I mean, if you have imported the right dependency, so it should auto complete everything. Let me see what's going wrong with this. So JSON converter, okay, it's not auto picking it. Let me see if we have added the right dependency in our build.gradle. So JSON converter, okay, so maybe it hasn't picked it up, not sure. So add converter, let's read the block once for retrofit. So we added the base URL, we will do build as well as create, but before that we have to add the converter factory because we are using JSON here, right? Alright, so I think the JSON converter, the dependency I have used is, instead of JSON converter, it's supposed to be converter JSON, and if you check that, if you search for it as well, so it should be converter JSON, and that's why it's not auto completing the converter factory which I want to use, right? So converter JSON, and now if I go here, so it should auto complete it, and if it's not happening, then do invalidate the cache, that will do the work for you, right? So, and because Android Studio indeed is a heavy software, right, and sometimes it stops working, or maybe it stops auto completing the code, so in that cases you can just invalidate the cache. So JSON converter factory, you can see the option here, just go on .create, and after that what I will do, .build, and finally I will do .create, and I will also pass the API interface which I created here, okay. I will pass the API interface class.java. Perfect. So this much part is done. Basically you have created the retrofit builder. They have asked you to create the retrofit builder here. I mean, they have done it all in the same way as I did. The base URL, build, and .create, you have to pass the API which you have created in the step number 3. So we are right now on step number 4, that is we are writing all the code for our main activity. Perfect. And after that, let's get the retrofit data in a variable. Retrofit data is equal to retrofit builder, one sec, retrofit builder dot get data. Why it's giving me the option of get data? Because in the API interface, no, I have created this function get data, right, which will get all the data from the endpoint search, Awesome. So here we will do get data, and we have to pass a query of type string. So I will pass the same which is given here in the Deezer API, which is Eminem, the name of the artist. So I will just pass this one here, okay. And now listen to me very carefully. This is a bit tricky but very easy once you understand it, okay. So what you have to do, you got the retrofit data, right? You got the retrofit data. Now the only thing remaining is you have to use one method, only one method, that is enqueue method. So what happens is, you have got the retrofit data from the API. So you have to run enqueue method, and based on if the API call is a success or a failure, you will do some operation, okay. So let's write .enqueue, and if you see here, it is telling me that Soumya, you have to pass callback parameter here. So what I will do, I mean, it will be a long piece of code if I go on writing the callback everything. So if you do control, let me show you, control shift space, so it should show, one second, just do control P, it will tell you what data you have to pass, right? And if you do here, sec, let me write object of type callback. So like it should auto complete it. Either you can write all the function everything on your own, like the callback and everything, or just use the shortcut control shift space, and you can see here it is giving you an object of type callback, right? Alright, so just do control shift space, and it will give you the first option, that object variable of type callback, list, etc. Just press enter, and you can see it has written a bunch of code for you, right? So let me help you understand this, don't worry. Let me erase the to do part from here. So what happens is, once you got the retrofit data, you run an enqueue method, you call enqueue method. So inside enqueue method, it's starting here and it's ending here. Inside this, we have an object which is a callback, which is of type callback, right? So here you can see there are two overrided method, on response and on failure. Let me explain you the purpose. So if the API call is a success, then this method, that is on response, is executed, right? If the API call, let's say if it's not happening, maybe due to internet, or maybe because the host is not working, the API is not working, any reason, so anything, right? If the API call is a failure, then this method is executed. So you would have seen sometimes, I mean, let's say if you make a request and maybe your internet is not there, so you would be seeing some screen like no internet, or maybe you're offline, or no data, something like that, right? So we have to do all such stuff in the on failure method. So failure, and here we will write, spelling is a bit incorrect, well, it's a comment only. All right, so now what we have to do, once the API call is success, we have to get all the data inside on response. So let me try to get the data in the on response method, right? So I will do val and data list is equal to response dot. Now you can see, I mean, they are giving me bunch of options, right? So what I will do is, this is the response dot body dot again, I mean, plenty of options are here. So what I will do, I'll first check with just response dot body if I'm getting the right information or not, right? So I already have one text view available here, which is hello world. So let's give ID to this. All right, I changed the design section. Yes, split. Let's close it. I'm just minimizing it. And here let's give a name to the text view ID. Let's name it just text view only. Okay, text view or hello text. So first of all, I have to check if my API is working fine or not. And then in part 2, we will learn how to, beautify our application using that data. I mean, how you can use that data in a meaningful manner. So val text view is equal to find view by ID, which is a text view, and then r dot id dot text hello text. Okay, hello text, perfect. All right, so we have the data list here, and I have got the text view as well. So let me do one thing, text view dot set text is equal to data list. I want to see once if I'm getting some data or not, dot to string. And also let's do a log as well to confirm if everything is working properly or not. So here I will write on failure tag on response, and inside on response I want to see the response that we are getting, plus a response, once again, response dot message, or is successful, anything you can write. I'm just writing dot body. All right, and if the API call is a failure, then in that case also I want a basic information, right? So tag on failure, and here I will get the message from the throwable, whatever the failure reason is. Obviously I want that reason, right? And another thing is, you have to add internet permission in your application. So just go in manifest and add user permission internet and just close it. Perfect. And let's now run the application and see if it's working fine or not. So I think we have completed all the steps that are needed to fetch the data from the API. Let's now see if it's working or not. If not, then we will debug it and see what's wrong at which point, right? Till then, let me summarize stuff. So first of all, we just added these dependencies, right? And secondly, so here you can see at the bottom the Gradle build is happening. You can see the background task is happening, which is they are trying to run the application. Obviously it's a heavy software, it takes time. And after that, step number 2, we created the data classes, right? So I'm seeing the hello world text here. So okay, let me expand it. So you can see we have got on failure method is being called here. They are saying that they expected begin array but was begin object at line 1 and column 2. Okay, so somewhere the data that the Pojo class or the data we created, somewhere there is mismatch of information. They expected array but we passed an object. So let's see where that incorrect information is passed on, and then we will improve, right? So let's start from the my data class only. If we go here, so this is the data class. So if we debug the code here, so in this step number 3, we created the API interface, but we passed here list of my data. I mean, my data obviously is the, the core data. I mean, we don't have a list of it. So obviously we don't want to pass list of my data here. So I'll just tell it that okay, you just have to pass my data, not list of my data, and accordingly we will make the changes here as well. Everywhere instead of my data, instead of list of my data, you just have to give the actual class, right? So just pass it the actual class, because we can pass list of the data class but not my data, right? I hope that makes sense to you as well. And here we will just correct it everywhere, and then we will run our application again. Okay, perfect. So I think it's done, and if I do here response.body. You can see the 3 variables that we had in our actual API, that is next, data, and another one is total, right? So you can get all these data here. If I try to get here response.body.total, you can see all the 3 datas are available here. Let's try to see how the data thing is. So it's asking me to put a nullable thing, so that if the data is null, then also it can manage the stuff. I mean, it will not crash. Basically your application will not crash. Awesome. And now I will simply run my application. Okay, so let's rerun it and see if it's working fine or not. So when we are working with API, so obviously there are high chances that we can make some mistakes here and there, because it's a huge code base. And you can see, I mean, the JSON data is available here. We are good to go. I mean, we now know how to fetch the data from the API. You can see the data part. I mean, if you go here, so the data part is here. It has 25 object, and all the JSON format data is available here on our app's screen. But obviously you can't show the data to the user in this way, right? You can't show it in this way. So in the next part, what we will do, we will understand how to utilize this information in a better way, how to design it in a proper way. Perfect. So let me summarize all these steps quickly for you, right? Okay, so here is the screencasting. So step number 1, we added the dependencies, retrofit and JSON converter. What we did a mistake there, we wrote the wrong dependency name, right? Make sure you write the right dependency name. Then we created the data class. Via that extension, we just copied the JSON data, and with the help of the extension, we created the data class. It created 4 data classes for me: my data, data class, album, and artist, right? And after that, API interface, and then we did the retrofit data.enqueue, all those things. We created retrofit builder in our main activity, and after that finally we populated the data in the view. I mean, we just checked right now, I mean, how to if the data is actually working or not. In the next part, we will exactly see how to populate the data in the views, right? Awesome. So if you have any queries about this much part, about how to fetch the data, how to use the library, etc., drop them in the comment section below. I will be happy to answer them. So now I hope all these tips are clear to you. What we exactly did, Let me explain step by step. So this is step 1. We added the dependencies in the build.gradle, that is retrofit dependency and converter JSON. After that, in step number 2, we created the data class using the extension from JSON to Kotlin class converter. We have those extensions, right? And after that, in step number 3, we created the API interface and we just wrote a simple function get data. We pass the query here using the @query, the keyword, and then that should be of type call and the name, the Pojo class name, and then simply added the headers, and we told that okay, search is the endpoint that we want to access, that we want to get. And after that, in step number 4, what we did is we created the retrofit builder. Okay, retrofit builder dot, we pass the base URL, added converter factory dot build dot create, and then we fetch the retrofit data. We called the enqueue method. Then there were on response and on failure, two methods. In on response, we write the code which we have to when the API call is success. If it is a failure, then we will use this method, right? We ran the app. Yes, that's all we have to do. So I hope the part is clear to you. This part, the part 1 is completely clear to you. If you are facing any doubt, if you have any, bug is coming up or anything, then drop them in the comment section below and I am there to answer them. I hope this tutorial was helpful for you. If yes, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to Scalar's YouTube channel for more such insightful content. See you in the part 2.